I'm Destiny.
I'm Aubrey.
And I'm Catherine.
And welcome to our podcast, Let's Eat.
This podcast, we are focusing on Asian Pacific food, and we went to a place called Pho and Grill and Pei Wei to compare authenticity.
To embrace our differences.
To understand others.
To learn new things about other people.
The first question was, why did I decide to open a restaurant? Well, honestly, not serious answer is that American food sucks. But serious answer is that, well, yeah, American food kind of sucks. But that's not really fair to Americans, I suppose, since the country is relatively young, only around 300 years old, in comparison to most of the other cultures in the world, which is, several thousand years. I just feel like most other cultures, including my own, has had more time and more opportunities to be exposed to different kinds of spices, different way of preparing food, and it would just be adding to the richness of the American culture, which is, a culture comprised of many other cultures. If I were to add my own cultural heritage into it. And one of the easiest way to do that is with food. The second question, why do you think it's important to keep authenticity in the food that you make? Okay, this is a serious issue. I think, and I've encountered this many times where, and I know that this is a harmless thing that they do, and most Americans don't intentionally try to be offensive. But I've encountered many Americans here who try to mix things that don't belong in a recipe into the recipe. And I guess this is an issue that you encounter in Europe as well. And you see all sorts of crazy stuff. Like I've seen people trying to put mayonnaise in ramen, that doesn't go together. And for Vietnamese food, I've seen people asking to add soy sauce into pho, which that might seem harmless, but here's the thing. You can change the recipe to an iconic dish and make it a new dish, right? Nobody's going to complain about that. If you were to add mayonnaise into ramen and name it something that is not ramen, or even naming it American ramen, like an American variety of ramen, that's fine. But a lot of people would then go on and have this mayonnaise ramen, right? And they would afterwards would claim that they have experienced Japanese culture, which I think that is just ridiculous. When you have changed a country's food to such a degree that it's no longer recognizable by its natives, it no longer carries the same cultural relevance or impact that it once had. And so, yeah, I think that's why, at least in terms of cultural cooking, I think it's good to keep to the authenticity that the dish holds. Third question. You experience any racial stereotypes and how do you feel about it? Honestly, I think particularly for me, I've never experienced much racial stereotypes. This is not meant to be a political statement at all, but I think it's a little bit overblown in the US. How sensitive racial topics can be, especially considering that, let's just be honest, most people around the world, most people outside of the Western Hemisphere are significantly more racist than any average American can be. However, I don't think I've experienced much discrimination or stereotyping, mainly because I feel like I can pass as an American national without much issue. I do know that my other friends who might not be able to convey their thoughts in English as proficiently, or people who might speak with an accent, I know that things are a little bit harder for them. And I've heard stories, horror stories about the type of things that they would hear people say about them, or their food, or their clothing, or their accent. how do I feel about it? I honestly think there's obviously a legitimate reason for all the complaints about racial stereotyping. And I think that you can always do better, right? Like as a nation, as a people, we can always do better in how we treat people that are different from us. With that said, I will say that I think on the other side of the issue, I think a lot of it is overblown. A lot of the interactions that people condemn come from very immature folks, like high schoolers, like middle schoolers, people that are, no offense, too young to fully comprehend empathy and fully comprehend another person's struggle. But most of the adults that I've met over here in the US, regardless of what their political affiliation might be or their cultural affiliation, whatever, have been very understanding, or at least they try. They really try hard to be understanding towards someone who's from a different culture. And let me tell you, that is a very different experience from what you would get from, let's say, Asia, Middle East, Africa, different countries in Africa, different regions of Africa. You would not get that type of treatment. So I think as many as there are things that can be improved, I think it would be ungrateful to paint American racial climate as the worst of the worst. I think that's ungrateful to say and kind of ignorant. Do you feel those things impact your business? Not really, honestly. I mean, people make jokes about like eating dogs, eating cats. That's just stupid, right? Like nobody really believes that when you're looking at a bowl of pho that there's going to be dog meat in there. Nobody believes that. At least I haven't encountered any. Most people actually appreciate other cultures much more than their own culture when it comes to trying out new food, as I've seen in the U.S. I've had some occasion to where people were unwilling to try new things, but they were still very polite about it, you know. Do you feel that music is just as important as food and culture, and why? No, I don't think it is. And that might be an unpopular opinion, but for the previous generation, I think this would apply. But for my generation, anywhere from 1990s, I don't think music really play as large of a role in culture anymore. Mostly because of, and I don't know if you guys would be familiar with this term, globalization. Cultural globalization is a real thing, where youths from Asia, from Africa, from Middle East, no matter where you are on the planet, from Europe, even like first world countries like the ones in Europe, are so exposed to American music culture, American Hollywood culture, MTV, all that stuff, that I think our music identity has kind of merged into one, rather than having distinct identities. Now, is that a sad thing? Maybe. I mean, I think you can think of it like that. You know, I think it is sad to lose a part of one's cultural identity. However, I think as different cultures embrace American pop, American hip-hop culture, they also added their own twist to it to make it their own version. You know, very much like how Americans added their own twist to sushi and whatever other food from other cultures that there were, pizza, you know, the likes. International people have added their own spin onto American products. And so, yeah, but I think Western music that has like a cultural twist does play a role in portraying like the essence of the culture that you might not get from just purely American hip hop, right? And you see this too in such products such as K-pop, right? It's very similar to American pop, but you do see some essence of Korean culture that you do not get from American pop. How does the environment of your restaurant reflect the authenticity of your culture? I strongly believe, this is going to be a short one, I strongly believe that you cannot experience the culture unless you do things like the people in the culture. That's why a lot of times, you know, like, you're not considered part of a culture if you don't speak the language, if you don't hold the same holidays, the the same events, the same festivals. Um, when you're cooking in Asian style, everybody's taking part. There's no such thing as, oh, only your mom is in the kitchen and then she rings a bell whenever she's done with food, and then you just kind of have to stuff your face like a pig. That doesn't exist in East Asian culture. Everybody plays a part. The kitchen's always chaotic. Everything is everywhere. There's a lot of yelling in other languages that you might not understand. Sometimes yelling in your own languages that you still don't understand. Just a lot of festivity, and that's what makes, East Asian food East Asian. Have you made any adjustment to your food to reflect American culture? No, I have not, and I'm glad I haven't, because, I don't really, I don't even know what counts as American culture when it comes to food other than salt and pepper. So no, I have not, and I'm glad that I haven't. I don't mean that to offend anyone, but I feel like most people would agree that there's not much to offer when it comes to American cuisine. Personally, I have taken Cajun food into consideration and trying to add Cajun element into East Asian cuisine. However, I don't view Cajun food as necessarily American, because its trace was from Africa. In fact, if you were to compare it, and I have close friends who are from Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal, if you were to compare their food recipe from Nigerian food, and Ghanaian food, you would find a lot of similarities to Cajun and Jamaican style cuisine. So yeah, because it started from a different continent, and it's only modified to fit the American palate after it came to America. I wouldn't necessarily consider it American food. But yeah, I don't even know what you can constitute as American cuisine at this point, to be honest, because it's so mixed with so many different things. In what ways do you try to share your culture? So quite honestly, just food. I don't know if there's much about Vietnamese culture that can be shared other than food. The music sucks, and that sounds mean, but I feel like I speak for 95% of Vietnamese Gen Z when I say that our music does not sound good. It's very pitchy, it's very high pitched. It sounds like, people yelling. It might have been suitable for some people's ears back in the days, but not anymore. In other ways of spreading the culture, I guess in terms of values is definitely another way to introduce your culture to a foreigner. Because Asian values are very different from American values. Americans prioritize individualism, which I do enjoy. I like individualism. Some element of it is healthy, but as you all know, if you become too individualistic, you become selfish. And that's something that Asian cultures are actively against. And of course, it has its own issues, but some of the best things about Asian culture has been how unified and, how much of a communal value there is. People value being with other people. There's no such thing as oh, I hate everyone, I hate humans, I'm just gonna be indoors and watch YouTube or search Reddit all day. That just doesn't exist. And I honestly think is actually, in some way, more psychologically and mentally healthy for Asian people that they have such a culture. But in what ways do you help customer experience your culture through food and music? So I think we already talked about the music enough for you to know that I don't really share my culture through music. But through food, I think we make compromise. Vietnamese food by nature is not spicy, so it works out well with a lot of Americans who cannot eat spice. Some people who might have issues with using chopstick, I just let them take things at their own pace. You can use forks, whatever you want to do. As long as you're eating it and you're not making a mess, I don't care. And then over time, a lot of these folks started getting interested in learning how to use chopsticks and learning how to, learning to add different herbs and different spices onto pho. So pho by itself is just a blank canvas, right? It's good on its own. It's nice. It's fresh. It's new paper. But what you do with it, the taste that you have in the end is based on your own creativity. And so I let them have that autonomy, since American culture is known for creativity. So yeah.
So this was my first time actually having Vietnamese food, because I usually have Chinese food and not even the authentic type. I usually have like Panda or Pei Wei or something like that. But this was my first time having like real authentic Vietnamese food, and it was really good. Actually, I mean, I didn't get pho, but it was really good. And I also found interesting how there was really not a lot of noise in the restaurant. I mean, there's really no kitchen sounds or music playing. It was just really silent. And it was also like really cool to see how people would just, I guess, eat their food and go, because at especially Americanized restaurants, people sit there for like hours and don't move. So it was just really interesting to me, and I really enjoyed the experience. I even enjoyed when the lady had came over there the first time, like Aubrey was saying, when they expected us to be ready and we were ready, but the lady had to come over there. Like 4 different people had to come over there because I'm very indecisive. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was really cute.
So I've actually been to this place before. I'm the one that suggested it, and what we usually do is I usually just get takeout from there. I like get the chicken or steak pho and just like order it to go. But this time it was actually just really nice sitting in the restaurant and like experiencing that environment, because it was really chill for a restaurant, especially like where we live, because like restaurants are just loud and rowdy all the time. So yeah, it was just really a cute little experience getting to just sit down in that restaurant and actually eat there. I was kind of surprised at like how extensive the menu was, because I've only ever gone there for pho. I've never really like sat down and actually looked at the menu and seen like what was on it, and that was also really cool. It was also really funny how quickly the waitress expected us to be able to order, because like we sat down, we opened our menus, and then she just kind of like appeared and was like, "Are you ready to order?" And we were like, no, because like we had like just sat down, and so it was a cute little experience. I really liked it.
So this was also my first time ever having pho, and I was really nervous because I always get really nervous when I try new things. But it was really, really good. I was really surprised, and I'm proud of myself that I tried something new. And that's kind of what I want to get out of this, is just to get out of my comfort zone. But it was really good. It was a really nice place. The place was really good. There were like so many people coming up to us and asking us if we were ready, but poor Destiny was not. And I used chopsticks, which I'm also really proud of. I've never been very good at using chopsticks, and this is my first time. I just kind of was scooping it up, but I'm really glad that I was able to do that. We also went to get boba after, and I've never had boba before. And that was also really, really good. It was like super like disorienting for me to try it because I'd never had it before, but it was really, really good, and I was like really happy with it.
So one thing I definitely noticed between the two places are that Pei Wei has a way like less extensive menu than the Vietnamese place did, because the Vietnamese place had like pages on pages of food and stuff, while Pei Wei has like 3 little screens of food. And also I don't know how like authentic crab wontons are, because it's literally crab and cream cheese in a fried egg roll wrapper. But oh my god, they're so good. I love Pei Wei's crab wontons so much, because I don't know why, they're just so good. And I mean, obviously, different cultures you're gonna get different foods, but like, I feel like there aren't any Vietnamese like Americanized fast food places like there are for like Chinese or Japanese food. Um, so different cultures, different food, I guess, but also like I don't know, Pei Wei was just a really, really different experience just overall, and it was really interesting.
One of the main differences between the pho place and Pei Wei was that the pho place was actually a lot quieter. Like I mentioned earlier, there was little to no sound, but in Pei Wei it was really loud. It gave you like that, I guess, American vibe from like that would occur at most American restaurants. There's a lot of talking and socializing that you don't get that you at authentic Asian places. And also, again, like Aubrey said, their menu options are a lot broader. Like Pei Wei has three different types of rice, while an authentic Asian place might only have like one or two. And so it's just um, interesting to see how Americans tend to expand on different cultures and change to fit the needs of every customer in order to bring in business, opposed to like authentic Asian places just choosing to stay true to themselves, knowing that people would still come.
I think the main difference for me was just the environment of both Fun Grill and Pei Wei. I think it's just totally different. I love Pei Wei just because you can take as many fortune cookies as you can, and they're never gonna stop you. They probably will, but um, yeah, I've always loved Pei Wei for that reason. I don't really like the food necessarily because I've had like other more authentic places that I'm like, this is much better, but I just like the fortune cookies. Um, so yeah, to me the main difference was the the environment of it. Fun Grill was more homey and small, and Pei Wei was just fast paced and busy, and that's not how I felt. Like I didn't feel like they were trying to get rid of me as soon as I finished eating. So yeah.